Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Decline Invite podcast, the only invite worth accepting. I'm your host, the extroverted IT leader, Ryan Drumheller, and today's guest is someone whose story immediately stood out to me because honestly, not many people could say they helped scale a startup all the way to $1 billion in annual sales. Joining me today is Roy Osing. Roy is a former president, CMO, entrepreneur, advisor, speaker, and author with more than 40 years of executive leadership experience. As president of a major data and internet company, he helped take the business from an early stage startup all the way to over $1 billion in annual revenue. He's also the creator of the philosophy, be different or be dead. And honestly, in today's world, so many companies look, sound, and operate exactly the same. I think this conversation matters more than ever. So we're going to be talking about scaling businesses, leadership, customer experience, entrepreneurship, audacious decision making, and why standing out is becoming one of the biggest competitive advantages in today's business. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to talk to your audience about something that I love. Be different or be dead. Let's do this.
Really looking forward to it. As a guy who gets labeled as an IT unicorn all the time, I immediately gravitated to that, and I can't wait to have all of these conversations and questions kind of answered here and spilled out. So, one of the first things we like to do is just go into some icebreakers. So, before we talk about the business and leadership, what's something people would probably be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I think just the achievement of being presented with an opportunity to take a startup organization sitting within the telecom space, by the way, and this was in the early days of the internet. And actually being called upon to take this fledgling business and try and maximize the opportunities of the internet for our company was a pretty amazing thing because I spent most of my life in marketing roles and operations roles, and for an operations guy to basically be asked to take on this leadership position in basically the old traditional telecom world, which was monopoly, engineering driven, order taking, etc., was a pretty remarkable ask. And so um, I was flattered and yet scared out of my wits when they actually asked me to do it. And so the rest is kind of like history. By the way, that business today, Ryan, is 18 billion a year. And so I kind of like to think that, yeah, me and my team had something to do with getting the run rate going to basically turn into a phenomenal business.
Yeah, I mean, talk about an achievement to have on the resume for sure. And as scary as you were, I mean, you did it, right? So I think that takes us right into one of my next questions here that I think is a great follow-up is that you've had an incredible career journey. And when you look back at it now, what stands out the most to you?
I being able to harness the passion and emotion of a team of people who are absolutely dedicated to the cause. I mean, to the growth cause. We didn't call it that. To the scaling cause. We didn't call it that either. It was a cause of the, oh my God, look at what we've got in front of us. We're sitting in a monopoly business, but the data world was competitive. So we were going to try and take advantage of a new technology in a world that was highly competitive, but we had a monopoly culture. Okay. And so we were regulated, we had monopoly, et cetera. And so the ability to do that by harnessing the hearts and souls of people is something I look back on and I just get goosebumps, to tell you the truth. I get goosebumps. I mean, I run into people, okay, because it's been a while since I left the business. I run into people in shopping centers that recognize me, and what they talk about is how much they loved what we did. There's no better testament to leadership and how people responded to that than have people do that years after. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that it's amazing they would recognize somebody, but to actually drag out those emotions is, yeah, it gives me goosebumps when I think about it, Ryan, to tell you the truth.
I love that. As somebody who right now is writing heavily, talking heavily about the state of leadership today and what is and what isn't working, and working on a project right before I hopped on this to prove some of my theories and data points. I love that there were still that existed out there, and a reminder that that can still happen today. Like all of these are choices in a lot of ways, and it does still come back to treating people like humans at the end of the day. We all have a job, we all have a mission, we all have, things we want to strive towards within the business. But those people are walking up to you. I have a rule that typically people are going to remember one of two people, really bad ones, good ones.
No, I agree. I mean, a part of the challenge today is to get back to some of the things that used to work really well, unfortunately, that are getting pushed down by a whole lot of concepts and philosophies that I have a difficulty with. I have difficulty with a lot of the tactically driven kinds of things that are going on in the business world. It's a world where people are infatuated by tactics as opposed to doing the hard work and creating a future for the organization that can be shared with people. So it's not so much of charisma or anything else, leadership. It's creating vision, creating a future, creating a journey that people can relate to. Okay, that fulfills them in some meaningful way. When you're able to do that and connect with people at that level, they will be with you always. I call them an army of advocates. They will be in your army of change forever. And in the world that we were in, I really needed that as a leader. We needed people on the side, okay, of doing things differently in a way that mattered to people, because we were coming from a world where people, quite frankly, were afraid of change because we never had to change. Remember the old telco world. That's the world. It was tight, it was boilerplate, it was shrink wrapped, and we had to break out of that. And so the only way to do it was to be able to relate to people on an emotional level with a journey. Okay, because don't forget, at the end of the day, leaders are paid to perform. We're not paid to be, kind of like nice guys in a way. Okay, we are paid. So at the end of the day, the people engineering piece was all driven by the need to have people perform at unbelievable levels. I mean, it just happens to be that in order to do that, you have to connect with them on an emotional level. And not too many leaders understand that. They go, here's a strategy, go execute it. Really? Really? I mean, you can't do that. You can't delegate that kind of stuff. And a lot of leaders don't even bother with doing it. And that's an issue. That's a huge issue for organizational performance today. As I call it, leadership abdication of the need to execute. They stop at the plan, which, by the way, is they think is perfect, which it isn't anyways, because the world isn't perfect. And they don't go to the execution level. If you go to the execution level, you have no choice but to be able to deal with people in their world on their terms. If you don't do that, nothing happens.
Yeah, I don't know that I could say that any differently. People have heard me if they've listened to this shouting at the rooftops a lot on this topic. It's great to hear yet another perspective about essentially if you want to make a difference, one, you can't just yell and point and say do. Maybe show, maybe try to connect, maybe give them some kind of communication and transparency.
Well, I coined an expression. In the old days, Tom Peters used to call this management by wandering around. In my world, it was more leadership by serving around. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there on servant leadership. Um, I have a bit of a different take on it because leadership by serving around is more about trying to cleanse the inside of things that are getting in the way of execution by talking to people and learning what the barriers are. I used to hold what I call bear pit sessions on a weekly basis. And it was me by myself as president of the company, didn't have my echelon with me. I was in the bear pit with people throughout the company. And we had about well, we basically ended up around 5,000 people in the business. But I would go in there, and the agenda was really simple. It was, tell me what's not working in terms of your job that's leading to ineffective execution of the game plan that we've all agreed to. And that was the agenda. It wasn't to hear about your bitches and lamenting about blah blah. I mean, eventually that came out. It was to try and get them pointed in that direction. And so the tactics that I used to actually focus on execution were all based on enabling people. And so we dealt with empowering people. We dealt with communication sessions. We dealt with what I call line of sight leadership, which happens to be, in my view, that the most critical piece of leadership that's missing today is that leaders don't translate the strategy in terms of what it means to people in the organization, because they don't think it's their job. They just throw the plan out there, as we said earlier, and assume that people will know how to execute it. So what I did is I created alignment plans throughout the organization where we would have workshops with marketing and sales, and yes, internal audit, yes, accounting, yes, advertising, and all of that, to try and identify the specific things that they need to do differently to execute the new scaling or growth plan that we had. And by doing that, and of course we would sign off on them, by doing that, we minimize the amount of discontinuity going on in the business. Okay. And disjointed activity where people without direction typically will do what they think is right. And sometimes that's not what you want them to do. And so those pieces, those tactics around how to execute from a leadership point of view were critical. And to be honest with you, I don't see many leaders doing them these days, because one of the reasons is you can't do it from your office, you can't do it through email, right? You can't do it on, well, maybe you can do a little bit on Zoom, okay, but it's like face to face with people, convincing them that the strategy is worth pursuing, and breaking their job down and identifying what they have to do, and to your point, what they need to decline. There's a lot of what's going on their plate that is no longer relevant in the new world. They need to decline that, and they need to exit out. And deletion in my lexicon is probably one of the most critical pieces of work that is needed to be truly innovative. And yet we don't think about deletion and decline as innovative. And yet all it does is open up bandwidth, right, to do new things. How can that not be innovative? And so what we're talking about here is kind of like a cluster of little leadership things that basically have to be done if you want to execute your plan and perform like no other. And unfortunately, as I said, my observation is very few leaders play in this space. And that's an unfortunate thing, indeed.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. I sat in those rooms with those leaders and started questioning like what's happening, like what what like I see what seems very obvious to me, and everyone else seems to be looking at me as the alien or the weirdo, right? Like what are you talking, why are you trying to get everybody, better? Why are you trying to upskill people? Why are you trying to do all these things that really a leader should be doing? And they're looking at me in judgment and stuff. And yeah, very, very frustrating times. I very much agree with everything that you just said. Um, but there was a moment that you realized that your business was becoming something very different. What was that moment, and what did it ultimately like lead you guys on a journey to embrace being different?
Well, there wasn't a single, I keep getting asked this question. Like, there wasn't a eureka. I mean, building businesses and scaling businesses is like moment by moment pain. You're not struck by lightning or this incredible sense of euphoria that says, aha, I figured it out. There's no such thing as figuring it out. There's a matter of picking what you think is right, executing it, discovering what works and what doesn't work, and what I call changing it on the run. Like, I'm a planning on the run guy. My planning process is a 24-month process, not a 5-year planning process, because 5-year plans don't exist. The fourth year, Ryan, never shows up. Okay, it never shows up, and so for me and for us, it was an incremental journey. It was do it, try it, fix it. Do it, try it, fix it with a context and a game plan that made sense. And if we have time, I can take you through that because it's completely different than the way most businesses deal with planning, because it's oriented towards execution. But it was literally moment by moment growth. All right. And we managed the business tenaciously every day, knew exactly what the revenue drivers were and how they were moving, by the way, because this business, to scale a business, is all about revenue growth. It's got nothing to do with cost. It doesn't. Revenue drives cost. And that's another issue that a lot of people have. So we managed the daylights out of that on a day-to-day basis. And in real time, made changes on the run. So I mean, yeah, we would get feedback from customers, and because we were in their faces all the time to get that made us feel good. But at the end of the day, yeah, it was moment by moment leadership on doing things that we thought were right. But look at the end of the day, there's only one way to tell if they were right. That is to do them and observe what happens. Okay. And by the way, that kind of leadership, again, doesn't exist because everybody thinks the textbook is right. Everybody thinks you need a 5-year plan of a grandiose aspiration and mission. And successful organizations, at least in my experience, are exactly the opposite to that, right? They get a run rate going and they bear down on execution and they learn from that. And eventually they discover where they need to be, but they didn't know that when they started out because we don't have divine wisdom. We don't have, as leaders, the ability, right, to forecast chaotic events that are likely to hit us. All we know is what we can see in our line of sight today and what we think is going to be around the corner, and we prepare the organization for that journey. Okay, and also to be ready when we're wrong. And nobody likes to admit they're wrong. Well, I was wrong a lot. Michael Jordan was wrong a lot, right? Steve Jobs was wrong a lot. So why do we think we need to be perfect in a world that's imperfect? It's insane, Ryan.
There is so much that you have said where I wish I could grab all the thoughts that I was thinking at the time that you're saying them and put them up here. But the number one thing that I'm with you on is change. And you think that you're wrong. Like you can only make the decisions with the data that you have in front of you at the time that you have it. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, things are going to change. A year ago, I did not know forecast the economy was going to change and like all these other worldly things were going to impact, my position on my job and maybe my entire career arc needed to change. Well, I went through the human side of it and came out a different perspective. You could fold that into all of the business decisions that we had to make. There's a lot of times I would stand in front of my own team. I had no problem admitting I was wrong. Like, hey guys, sorry you're wrong. The number one thing though that you said that I gravitate to, it's totally fine to be wrong. That's how we learn. And if you're willing to adapt and change on the fly, instead of you keep jamming the same thing in place that we already have that data to know that we're wrong because we're up here telling you that we're wrong. Well, now we're going to pivot. We're going to listen to the ideas. We're going to try these different things. Maybe one of them gets us out of it. Maybe one of them becomes even better plan. And I would teach that to my teams as well. Sometimes we would have to get forced into doing what we saw was already an obvious not going to work. And those things happen. We have to do it. We all got bosses. We all got to listen. We got to do that thing. But there was one difference that I would teach my teams. Okay, we all know probably what's coming here. Let's work on option B. And it's not a I told you so. It's not any of that. Let's build the option so when that day comes where they finally see what we see, let's give them a way out because we don't want to see our teammates fail. Just because they're not IT doesn't mean they're not our teammates. The business succeeds, we succeed. We're a party to the business. So my methodology the entire time you're talking is just like screaming in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm so justified for everything they thought. all the way through here so far. So you
Well,
appreciate that, honestly.
I mean, I'm often asked, like, why is that? Well, I honestly believe the education system has inappropriately taught us that the perfect plan exists, right? I mean, all you got to do is think about Keynesian economics that's predicated on all things remaining equal. Well, that by its very nature, okay, that way of thinking is totally wrong and it will totally lead you to inappropriate things. And yet, we have leadership in businesses that is absolutely focused on textbook thinking. All right, so I got this whole piece called "Put the Textbook Down." Okay, yeah, it got you where you got to. You got some skills, etc. But look at the future isn't determined by linear regression. All right, I have a math degree. I've never solved a I've never solved a business problem with a differential equation in my life, all right, or a binomial distribution theory. It exists for various reasons in textbooks, teaches us how to solve problems, et cetera, et cetera. But to actually continue to use those tools in a world that's chaotic, okay, that has so many independent variables that cannot be quantified, businesses that can't be formularized, to actually reside on those is insane. Okay. And all you're doing is putting the future of your business, your employees, your families, and society at risk. And yet, and yet, it happens constantly. Constantly. People actually think it's ridiculous to have a 24-month plan. And the reason for that is they've been taught that you need a 5-year plan and it needs to be pristine and it needs to sit with beautiful covers, right? And you need to have a PowerPoint presentation to back that up and blah, 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 blah. You got to have AI running behind it, when you give presentations to explain all the theoretical concepts. And quite frankly, Ryan, it's so much bullshit, I can't even stand to think about it.
I mean, just the word AI is every reason why I cannot give you an actual 5-year plan. That, like, why did I waste time making this? Because nobody can tell you what's going to happen here in the next 2 years. We all have guesses. We have theories. Coming from a technology space, it was always kind of cute to be like, oh yeah, in 5 years I'll know exactly the technology that'll be out there, and I'll be able to give you today in 5 years my best assessment of what we could utilize it. No, like, you're paying me to come to you when I learn what is out there, what we could do with it, give you the ROI, whatever it is, of why this might be something we want to look at in real time, which is why I'm a huge advocate for, if you have leadership just sitting there, coming to work every day and going home, it's not good enough. You need to actually be, in IT, things are always changing on my side of the world. If I'm not trying to keep up with it, what good am I to your business? Because I'm already behind at that point. I'm not going to be able to give you, the actual what's out there, what we can utilize it for. I'm giving you late data at this point. Like, what damage have I done is a better question at that point. So, yeah,
Yeah.
as somebody who has a ton of credentials, I have a video that I just put out not too long ago that essentially explains, like, why I have it all, what it's good for, and what you actually need, which is a combo of a lot of things. You actually need experience in doing so. You can't just have the book smart. Fantastic. The book taught me a lot of things, and maybe when I see that problem, I'll be a little bit ahead, but I still need to think on my feet. I still need to be able to pivot. I still need to be able to drift and make a fast decision on something that I might only have, we've already talked about, a limited amount of data, and say, hey, well, we're going to run with this because this is what we have. But also be fast about admitting when it's looking like it's not going to work, and pivot again and learn from it.
Well, it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious, but one of the problems that people have is that they operate without context, and I want to talk to you that a little bit because without context, you can't execute, or if you do, you're executing without some sort of picture of the end game you're looking for. And so my kind of mantra around this is you need to be context led and execution driven. And what I mean by that is the context piece should only occupy about 20% of your time. the execution piece in terms of thinking should occupy 80% of your time. Okay, so the textbook, okay, leverage in terms of growth, okay, is a very small portion of it. It may help you help define your end game, okay, but that's all it does. Okay, it gives you an approximation. I had to create a strategic planning process, which I call the strategic game plan. And there's lots of information on this on my website, bedifferentorbedead.com. But it's something that I use to actually create a strategy for organizations in 48 hours. Okay, 48 hours. They walk in and they walk out with a game plan that can be executed in the 49th hour. And it's done by answering 3 questions. So let me just outline this for you because this is really important, right? The first question is, how big do you want to be? That's a question about top line revenue growth. So in 24 months, what do you want your top line to look like? And so it ends up to be, we will grow our top line revenue from $1 million to 10 million or something like that, right? But it starts off with a declaration of growth. Now, most planning processes don't start out that way. They end up with economic impact. They don't start out with economic intent, right? And the reason it's so important to start out that way is the how big answer defines the character of your strategy. It defines how aggressive you're going to be, right? How much risk you're going to have to take, et cetera, et cetera. And so I start out with that, and that's a fun conversation. By the way, these strategic game planning sessions are held between myself as a content provider, not facilitator. Yeah, I push people into content. I don't facilitate them into that with the president, right, and their direct reports, say, right? That question, how big do you want to be, is an interesting one because right away you start to see the the dynamics, right? So that's question number 1. Second question is, where are you going to get the money, right? It's all about, the question is, who do you intend to serve? And what that's all about is identifying target customer groups that have the latent potential to deliver that growth that you've just defined. So you try and keep the number of customer groups small because you don't have an infinite amount of resource, right? So who do you want to serve? And a critical question here is, what do they crave, Ryan? Not what they need. What do they crave? What do they desire? What do they lust for? What do they covet? It's an emotional conversation because typically the emotional trigger in a transaction causes success. The logic very rarely does. You make choices based on how you feel. And yet, nobody includes feelings in a strategic planning process except Papa Roy. I do, all right? Papa Roy does. That's part of the planning process. So once you figured out what they crave, the third question is, okay, how are we going to compete and win with other people who are messing around in that space? And this is where, to the point of differentiation, which I'm sure you will get to, I had to create my own approach to differentiation, which today is woefully inadequate and mediocre, and we can come back to that. It's called the only statement. All right. So your statement of how you're different is sort of captured by the statement, we are the only ones who, okay? Not we're better, not we're best, not we're number one, not we're market leaders, because I call that claptrap, doesn't mean anything, but we're the only ones who. And so when you answer those 3 questions, you actually have a game plan that you can now start executing. And it's occupied, in a relative sense, a small part of the process. And now you have time to figure out how you're going to breathe life into that puppy, how you're going to actually execute it. Okay. And so what that allows you to do is actually operationalize the notion of loosening up on strategy, because the world won't let you be perfect and precise, and tighten up on execution. And we did that. That got us the run rate going. And I deal with small businesses on the same basis, and they're absolutely amazed that in 48 hours, sometimes we have to reframe their business, Ryan, because indeed they're not the only one who does something, and we have to figure out what that is to allow them to be successful.
And now we'll hear a message from our sponsors.
Hello, everyone. Ryan here from Stellarhorn.
Let me take a quick second to talk to you about something I see all the time. Most businesses don't actually have a technology problem, they have a leadership problem. They've got systems, tools, even teams in place, but no clear direction, no strategy, and no one connecting technology to the business. That's exactly why I built Stellarhorn Group. I help organizations through fractional CIO leadership, advisory, and project based work, bringing executive level technology leadership without the full time CIO cost. Whether it's strategy, cybersecurity, AI governance, or leading critical initiatives, it's about helping you make better decisions, reduce risk, and actually move forward with confidence. If that sounds like something your organization is dealing with, please reach out. Let's have a conversation. Stellarhorn Group, rare leadership, real results. Technology leadership without the full time CIO cost. So, now that we're back, you have a philosophy that centers around, and we've talked about it a couple of times, be different or be dead. Where did that idea originally come from?
Well, it's basically the manifestation of the belief and the mantra that's driven me through my whole life. To be honest, I think I was born with the be different or be dead gene. I had a mother who was amazing, and she drove me to always be open to different ways of looking things, to always be a little suspicious of the common path, etc. So she was like that, and I never realized it until doing some podcasts like this, when it suddenly occurred to me that my mother is probably the culprit behind it. But it grew, okay, as a philosophy, and I applied it in my life. And when it came to business, it just seemed to be a natural expression, and more so because when I looked around, Ryan, what I saw in the world were competitive claims that were absolute claptrap. They didn't mean anything. They didn't help a customer answer the question, why should I do business with you and no one else? Okay, so universal or unique selling propositions that aren't unique at all. I mean, come on. Let me just give you one. Here's a company that claims that they are the Earth's most customer centric company. That's their competitive claim. Okay, and before you go bullshit, before you do that, I mean, I'm not going to tell you who it is. Pretty famous company, and I'm not saying that some of that stuff, you know, it, it can't have some sort of value, but it's not on the outside. And so my observation was that in spite of the fact that the world is so competitive, customers are so fickle, technology is changing so fast, regulations are changing so fast. In spite of that, and you would think that businesses would get better at differentiating themselves from their competition, quite the opposite is happening. And I call it undifferentiation is really happening. People are copying best of class. How can you be different if you're copying somebody? He said. Um, they're using claptrap like better and best and number one, and claiming that you should buy from me, Ryan, because I'm the best. Seriously? And aspirations run wild. I mean, companies say that you should buy from me because I create electric vehicles, or because I'm here to save the home planet, or because I am the most customer centric business in the world. you know and lastly, all of those things are what I call organizational narcissism. We've created a world where businesses are narcissists because they actually believe their own crap. So in that sense, I go, I mean, now is the time. I mean, we really need to bear down on how to help people differentiate their companies, be different in a way people care about. And by the way, that's an important distinction here. Okay. I don't mean be different for the sake of being different. I don't care what the color of your hair is. I don't care what your pronouns are. I don't give a shit about any of that. All I care about is how you're being different in a way that other people care about. That's the source of be different or be dead. And so the importance of it today is actually so much greater than it ever has been in terms of survival of organizations. And in fact, my first book was called Be Different or Be Dead, Your Business Survival Guide, which I wrote in '09, when we had a rather challenging economic set of circumstances. And 6 books later, I've now I wrote another one called The Audacious Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to a Billion. And so that's scaling and growth oriented. The importance of being different drives that whole process. And I lie awake at night sometimes, thinking about a world. Remember the old normal distribution curve with that great big glut in the middle, the bell curve, right? Where 99% of the world sits, and then the tails on the right and on the left contain the minority. I actually hallucinate and wonder what the world would look like if we could take all the organizations in the glut of that bell curve and move them 2 points to the right in terms of being meaningfully different to people. And I just wonder what society would look like, what business performance would look like, what people's careers would look like, what technology would look like, okay, what the relevance of AI would look like in that world. And I'm astounded because I am firmly in the belief that the world would be so different. Okay, it would be so more relevant. People would have meaningful, careers where they're oriented towards what people care about than ever before. We wouldn't be caught in a technology product push world, and that's where we are, my friend. That's where we are, and I'm not being critical, but it's not good enough. Customers need to feel emotionally responsive to who they're doing business with, and they're not, because everybody's flogging the same shit at them. Sorry, I get going on this stuff. This is my thing, right? I've been at it for too long. And it needs to change, my friend. It needs to change.
I mean, you're not wrong. I've been on so many conversations. I'm like, at some point, I found myself as an extroverted individual, like all burnt out from talking about AI because that's, just slammed in our faces. But you got these companies that are getting rid of entire departments and thinking like, oh yeah, AI is just going to take care of it. And then here you are talking about the human connection piece, and it's very simplistic. Do you want to call when you have a problem and talk to a bot, or do you want to talk to a human? That is your data point. And if you're going to go get rid of your sales and your marketing, you're in trouble. I don't know what data you need. Like I can give you all the data you want, but that's just a basic fundamental human connection piece. And uh, I mean, hearing everything you're talking about right now is great for me. It's honestly filling my cup up because I feel like the last year or so I've sat in these rooms where I'm like, I know I'm different. I absolutely understand that. But am I in a place where I'm so different that I'm not going to actually get to any kind of level of success or help any of these individuals because they don't want that. Like that's what I feel like anyways. I've sat in these rooms where they don't want any of those things.
Well,
Now to you say that that's just my like experience so far. And there are absolutely businesses that are trying to be the one percenters.
um,
I want to help all those one percenters.
no, I think let's go back to context. Okay, we all need context. Context drives our actions. Context should drive what's important. And so if you think about the process I just described, right, the challenge becomes one of identifying people and what they crave, people we want to serve and what they crave. Okay, because once you've really articulated that, Ryan, you're now in a position to supply what they crave. And don't forget, we defined a craving as an emotionally defined need. Okay, they will recognize that when you give it to them. You won't have to sell them on it. Like, look at a craving is really simple. It represents things like trust, okay, credibility, all those human related things, right? And so when you give them that, when you give them evidence that you're supplying that, they will immediately connect with you. There will be no sale involved. Okay, it will be an engagement founded on emotion that will lead to a transaction. You can say that again. That's the business process. Satisfy a craving, make a connection, earn the transaction. And by the way, never expect it again. You need to do it again and again and again. All right. You can't replicate that with a bot. To the people that use bots, I say this: if you must, if you must use a bot, um, do me a favor and provide an easy out to a Homo sapien. Okay, make it easy to get the hell out of there and talk to a human being, because you don't. At the moment, you actually believe, you bot suppliers, that there's a frequently asked question, right? That presumes that my question is going to be just like everybody else's. That's bullshit. Papa Roy has a certain question that nobody else has in terms of the answer that he wants. And you need to, by the fact that you force me into the FAQ, tells me that you don't give a shit about me. You don't. Okay, despite the fact that the bot's got a nice, warm, kind of sexy voice and all that kind of stuff. Who cares, right? And so if you're going to do that, if you're going to be a tactical driven gnome that's like everybody else in the herd, at least allow me the courtesy of getting the hell out of that do loop and talk to a real human being as quickly as possible. Please, could you do that for me? All right, you
I
wanted
think
it,
we're
Ryan. You got it.
just gonna say, I think we're assuming that even some of those companies even have individuals at this point that that we can get to. Is like, you're right. Like, there's a lot of companies that are proving that humans are numbers, and they're not Bob or Sally or Bill or Jimmy. They're numbers, and we've seen that data day after day right now. And I think a lot of individuals that are like working in this industry right now also are like, this is going to bounce back into the other way. The pendulum is gonna swing. Like, they're gonna figure this out one day. And I go, yeah. I mean, if they survive, at the end of the day,
Well,
maybe.
the problem is, who is they? You see, that's the problem, is that they today represent are everybody. There's no, like, we're looking for, it's guys like you and I who are trying to push the rope uphill. Okay, we're trying to say, look at the pendulum will only swing back when people, okay, earn the relevance to cause behavioral change to make that happen. And that's the difficult part of this conversation. Sometimes people say, well, what is the biggest disappointment in your life? It's this that I'm talking about is my biggest disappointment. Okay, the inclination of organizations, particularly, to do things differently, okay, is masked, okay, and chastised by the fact that we're trying to do things the way they used to be, okay, and you're chastised for that, for having that way of thinking. Okay, you're rewarded by talking about how AI can transform your business. You're not rewarded for emphasizing the importance of human connection, okay, in a world that's going absolutely 180 degrees out of that. And so that's part of the challenge that we have here. Look at, I'm an advocate of AI. I use AI. I use it substantially, but it's all within a context of what I'm trying to achieve, right? Some people will say, well, what do you think about AI? And I would say, I haven't got a clue until you tell me what you're trying to achieve. Okay, because it's a tactic. It's not an end game. Okay, so to our point earlier, we're talking about customer service. Let's suppose your strategic game plan was all about creating memorable customer experiences. And there's a lot of businesses out there that claim that, right? But they don't do it, right? They take AI and do the old thing and blow it at you. But if that's your game plan, then the real question about AI is, how can I use it to blow people away? How can I use that technology to create memories for them? And if you do that work, you will never do it to do an FAQ function. It's it's wrong. It's absolutely 180 degrees out of phase, but you'll find a more relevant application. And the same goes with social media and how you use that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So look at its context. I want you to think about what your context is. What do you want to be when you grow up in 24 months from a revenue point of view? Let's start there. Let's not go to implementing sexy technologies. because everybody's doing that. And if you're doing that, then you're not different. And so it's either be different or be dead. Seriously. The be dead piece I've been criticized a lot about because it's very, very hard, right? And I keep saying, yeah, well, what's the ultimate consequence of not being able to differentiate your business? I'm sorry, you can call it resting for a long time. I'm going to call it dead. You're going to be dead. Okay? So get over yourself. All right? And try and get some sort of sense of urgency in your thought process and your thinking in your business to actually do some meaningful work. And then look at all of the amazing opportunities that technology can bring within that context. That's what I want you to do. Context first, tactical execution elements second. Can you do that? Pretty simple.
I'm loving it because I've been an entire career so far on essentially going, yeah, this process is amazing. And then my claim to fame would always be, but the human part was missing from it. And let me explain why. And the nice thing is, at least in my case, a lot of individuals were like, okay, that does make sense. We just didn't think about when we were, going through that. In this case, we're talking about an M&A, like kind of flow through checklist, workbook, so to speak. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but you want to send me in day one to these individuals that you just told they now work for you. They don't know if they have a job, they're processing, and I need to get this, and this from them before I even say, hi, my name's Ryan. We got a problem here. Like, I need a little bit of a warm up. I need to like make a connection with them. Probably somebody needs to give me at least a, hey, put something out from an HR level to say you are or not or whatever you're doing with their jobs, because I'm not going to know, but they're going to talk to me first. So like we need to at least establish that. And when I did the next four, M&As that we did, we had such a better time, like, better feedback, and that's a hard thing to go through. You do a routine and a reality, and then Tuesday, I now don't work there anymore, and every decision that I had doesn't matter because somebody else is now telling me what that decision is going to be going forward. It's a lot of things to process right away. You got me over here going like, yeah, I'm going to be on site in Utah and 2 days, and I'm gonna need the following, like, crazy. Um, but changing it up and making a human connection, and then you are absolutely right about the way that I talk to any of the clients or any of the individuals curious. They're talking to me about AI. It's an amazing tool. You can use it for quite a bit of things. Um, what things in your business have you looked at that are very manual or whatever it is that a human really shouldn't be doing, and you could have a human doing other things that would be a better use of their time. Let's start there for quick.
Well, let me give you an example. One of the biggest benefits for me, okay, in the execution element, okay, was what I call cleansing the inside. That is a function where what you're trying to do is get rid of all the friction points, increase the viscosity, if you will, of the value delivery system. That's what you're trying to do. Okay. It might be reasonable to ask what role AI can play in that. Might be reasonable because its function is to process data. Its function is to look for operational, let's call them efficiencies, not effectiveness, but efficiencies, right? So that may be a place where you say to somebody, okay, let's do an AI audit, okay, around the installation process, around the credit verification process, something like that, with the objective of reducing touch points, increasing throughput, etc., so that you want to reduce value delivery by 10%. Let's see what we can do. But see, that's an example of where you get a productive utilization of that technology. But you never say, build me a business plan. I mean, what kind of idiot would ever do that? Well, unfortunately, Brian, there are a few out there doing that. But
Yeah.
it's just incredible, just incredible.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about like governance models. And right now it's highly, dictated by AI, but in certain topic here, the same idea can be reapplied. But I talk about AI governance models because it's kind of like what you had just mentioned. You give a place where, for one, now the leaders in your business are all managing, where you're going to deploy the best efficiencies. Okay, great. Step one. Step two, you're giving a place where your employees can come and bring the ideas. So now you're actually hearing the real challenges inside of your business from individuals who, as long as they feel heard, and then, we act upon those within a way that we can figure out the best way to act upon it in a secure way, put somebody in charge of that wild concept these days and not a bot, but put somebody into there. And now you've made a safe place. You're hearing the real things. You're finding effective ways to deploy that as a tool and also making that human connection at the same time. A lot of places they look at that and they're like, I just thought governance was, just like X's and O's and checking the box, just make sure we're compliant. I'm like, it is. You want to create safety, you want to be secure, but it's also about these other pieces that you're missing. And if you do these pieces on top of that, you're going to turn that number right now in the industry that's an 80% failure rate on AI projects right now into success, because you've gotten all the pieces right ahead of it and talk to the people. And now they're willing to work harder, doing, trusting you more, whatever it is. Like, they have a human connection to go back and try to find other ways that they can help this business grow and help you meet your goals. It's a wild concept, but the ones that do adopt to that absolutely have a better outlook. And it's AI right now. You can put that onto anything. Have, like what you said, you're having, the beer down conversations where you were just walking into the lion's den, really, but you were showing care. You're showing you were listening. You were showing you take their feedback and try to come back with some kind of ways of being able to try some things or be able to pivot. And it's the same idea.
Well, we're in a spot, unfortunately, where it's a leadership issue. What leadership should be doing is they should be having a conversation with the organization about the philosophy of AI deployment. And that's all about context. I'm sorry, I'm going to be repetitive. Okay, they don't talk about where and why in the philosophy of deploying technologies like AI. And so when all of a sudden people see a project, an AI project, they wonder, they immediately go to, how is it going to affect me personally? And they're afraid, as opposed to saying, oh, okay, I get it. I've had an opportunity to have a conversation about how we're going to be deploying AI from a strategic point of view and what the strategy means. And I happen to agree with the strategy, and therefore I'm going to support the deployment of AI this way. And oh, okay, here's a project and I can relate to that. It's a leadership issue, but again, it's part of the tactical infatuation syndrome. Okay, that's a TIS, Ryan. You can call it TIS, tactical infatuation syndrome, that's going on in business, where that's what we do. And AI just happens to be the latest fad, and a pretty important one, probably one that's going to affect us a long time. If that's the case, don't you think we should take a step back and try and legitimatize it in terms of strategic context? I mean, yeah, we should be doing that, but we don't. We just run forward, right? And trying to be the first one to apply AI to this, you're right. And in all these applications, and I always ask myself, how does that relate at all to what the organization is trying to do? And without knowing that, I really don't have an opinion as to how effective it is. And I think that's where we need to go. We need to play there first.
I think we need to get a bunch of individuals like us and others that I know into a space and just start touring all these businesses and say, hey, this is like, if you actually talk to individuals who are working, especially with AI right now, in all of these different business segments, it's like lemmings. They're all watching each other fall off the cliff. And they're like, well, he fell off the cliff. I'm falling off the cliff with him.
Hey, that's the ultimate consequence of copying best in class. You end up with them at the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah, I don't know what data points you need to see. Like, I'm trying to translate it into monetary or whatever it is that, throw it into, these people's faces that are making these decisions and go, whatever communication style I need to communicate and connect with you, I will try. I will keep trying. But the answer, like what you had just said, is, You need to go back. You need to be able to crawl before you can walk and you can run. And just because your competitor jammed AI in, that does not mean they did it right at all. See other videos I've done about bad data in, bad data out.
Well,
Uh,
it just means you're going to be unsuccessful quicker. That's all.
Yeah, they're right. They beat you to AI. That might not be a good thing. That might be a horrible thing for them because of how they did it. And if you worry about yourself and you worry about strategically, like you had mentioned, doing these things and setting it up appropriately, I guarantee you're going to see better results at the end of the day because you also thought about your own business and what's happening with it and what proficiencies you can get. What a concept. That's
Well,
crazy.
the other thing is why not spend the 2 months now creating context rather than find out that you're dead in 24 months because you misused the technology like AI that just took you quicker to the bottom. Quicker to the bottom. Who in the hell wants to go there? Give me the time now. Let's figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and then ask the question. What about all these sexy things we can do to get us to our end state? People don't seem to want to do that, and that's a functional leadership. It's a functional leadership. Leaders don't want that behavior. They want to see instant results. Why? Because the textbooks told us we need as leaders to move quickly from A to B and then move on to C and then on to D and then on. Yeah. So, you know,
Your phrase is absolutely correct right now because I'm watching a couple companies right now that jammed AI in. They did none of these things I've talked about, here with you and other, things I've recorded. And the AI started deleting all their data and they didn't back it up and they have nothing. I'm curious if they actually are already dead. They just haven't admitted it yet. Uh, at worst, it's such a disaster. Like their reputation is already tanked.
I'm going to ask
And
one
that's
simple
what we hear.
question. I'm going to ask one simple question of AI, and then we can move because this is like it goes around and around. How can you use AI to create a competitive advantage that will, in other words, will make you different from everybody else in a way people care about? That's the question. That's the question to ask, right? And it does involve cleansing the inside because it's strategically related, but it requires you to take a little different view, okay, of the capability that it offers, and that's all it really is. It's just a capability. It's like a product or a service or a process or a system. It's just another. But we seem to give it this mystique and pour so much money into it, okay, to try and make it relevant, that it causes all sorts of dysfunction.
It's what I quantify as a tool. So you have a tool belt, you have all these cool things. It's a multi-tool. It's an amazing multi-tool. But to answer your question, I can already answer that question. The AI doesn't give you the advantage. The AI gives you the capabilities. Now you need all those smart individuals that I hope that you still have there that you didn't let go
Oh,
as a part of this. But those are the individuals that are going to get creative. They're going to think. They're going to find the ways to then use that tool in a creative way. You create a competitive advantage. Like it's basics, but we seem to have thrown that out the window and forgotten all of those things. And when my new best friend is AI, and I'm walking through here, and my other five friends, I don't know who they are anymore. I don't even know their names, and it's a crazy time and having these conversations with individuals to be like, you're a good business person. Why? What are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Uh, so going going a little bit forward and getting towards the end here, I want to get into just a couple of quick things about the young professionals that are coming into this and the future leaders. What do they need to hear more often right now, and what are the philosophies that they need to do more of instead of what's currently going on outside of some of the things that we've definitely already discussed in high
no,
passion?
there's nothing else. They need to understand the whole concept of be different or be dead. They need to understand that differentiation today is a killer. That when they take their hard-earned money and they want to start a new business, They better do the work up front. I want to understand how the value they intend to provide, not the product and service, the value is different in a way people care about. They need to do that hard work that we've just talked about. There's no other option to start with. That is the starting place. That's the birth of success, okay, is figuring out by answering 3 simple questions where you want to be in 24 months, and then ask the question of relevance of all the magnificent tools that are available. Okay, but the key problem is that the CEOs and the young professionals that I deal with, they don't ask that because they're not taught that. Again, this is a meltdown of the education system. Okay, that don't talk about the sorts of things I talk about. Okay. And the reason that makes me damn mad is they work. Okay. All this academia teaches you is a bunch of theory. Okay. And my favorite is the blue ocean strategy. All right. If you're familiar with that, a couple of academics wrote this very successful book that was bought largely by other academics. But the premise was, if you want to be successful growing a company, go find a market where there's no competition. Boom. Okay, and the reason that that's good is because you don't want to play in red oceans because there's too much competition there. Well, you know why that's a wrong way to look at the world? First of all, they look at the world from that perspective because they've never been in that world. The fact is, you need to earn the right to be different and to have a competitive advantage by being successful in a red ocean. You're not handed a blue ocean. That's a theoretical precept. You're not handed that. Okay, to most practitioners in business, they want to learn how to be successful in the world that you and I have just been talking about. Lots of competition, customers who change their mind, regulations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but the problem is we try and teach them that there's an easy way out. The easy way out. Okay, I'm going to go find a blue ocean. That's how I'm going to be successful. As opposed to I'm sitting in a red ocean probably for a long time, and I got to differentiate myself to be successful. And so, young professionals, young CEOs, they think they can skip a bunch of steps, and I see it all the time, and it kills them. Because I say to them, if you can't define precisely how the value you're supplying is different from your competition, stop spending your money because it's going to kill you. You're going to be broke. Your parents' money will be taken and they'll be broke. And so that's it. Nothing else. Nothing new.
Right.
Just do the work.
Fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic advice. In a lot of ways, I feel like you pointed out multiple times, there's a lot of tried and true things. And even with the tried and true things, you can find ways to be different. There's things that work that you should definitely at least start with. And then if you find a creative way to enhance that or, make it better, fantastic. But there isn't a cheat code at the end of the day. Nobody ever handed me anything that didn't take hard work to achieve and get. And I learned a lot along the way. I learned way more from all of the failures than the successes. And because of that, every time I see something now, it's like, okay, I have all this vast experience and there'll be things that surprise me, but I'm more apt to want to jump in, fix the failure now. It's a challenge. It's exciting for me to be pulling from those things and go, how do we get ourselves out of this? How do we make ourselves better? How do we become the best? Whatever the challenge is that we're trying to solve. And you hit the nail on the head. I don't know that a lot of places actually know the list of differences or things they want to be when they grow up or where they want to head. Like, you got to take a step back and
But,
get
but,
that all
but,
on there.
but Ryan, hang on a sec. I got to stop you there. It's not about what you want to do. It's got nothing to do. That's a narcissistic expression of what you want to do. If you want to play this game, it needs to be what other people crave. It needs to be how you can deliver uniqueness into what other people emotionally want to connect with. That's the challenge of leadership. Okay. You marry that with what you're able to do. Okay. But you don't start out there. Like if you want in your technology business, if you want to triple your revenues in 24 months, it may not be about how you think you should do it. It's about who are the people that have the potential. That's the who. What do they crave? And how can you be the only one that does what you do in satisfying those cravings? Look at it, it's just a boom, boom process that nobody else uses, and it delivers $1 billion a year in annual revenue in those days. That's the only proof point I got, mate. That's the only proof point I got. It works. So simple.
Yeah, as I say, it's so simple. It's logical, and I've learned that word scares me more every day that I go on, because it's just like, why am I the only one seeing this?
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh, But with that, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation. I have a great feeling that I'm going to be following up, trying to have more conversations, or at least just, what are you hearing, or, what kind of advice can I help you with, or, anything from the technology space, because I love meeting new people and hearing, different things, because it helps me get better. I only know what I know today, and I'll be smarter tomorrow if I keep that door open. It has been one of my biggest philosophies. So, uh, I appreciate you, taking the time and being on here with me and having this conversation. And I really, really hope that others in business take the time to listen and take a step back and think about some of these messages before they run and, go forward. Crawl, walk, run is another simple strategy that they can absolutely do. But where can people find you, follow your work, or, learn about anything else that you have going on out there?
Well, I have a website, bedifferentorbedead.com. Come visit me. It's a very old website because I've been at this for a long time. I think I created it in 2009 when I wrote my first book. And so it's populated with a lot of resources, Ryan, around exactly what we're talking about. I blog on a regular basis. I've actually got four kinds of blog approaches that I've been playing with. Besides just a weekly blog, I have a wacky Wednesday blog where I take, modern concepts and actually obliterate them. I've got a thoughtful Thursday blog and so forth, and I've got a standalone Saturday blog where I take a deeper dive and twist this whole issue of being different in a bunch of ways. So there's a lot of resources there. You can please subscribe to my blog, Ryan. I want you to subscribe, and I can tell if you don't go to Be Different or Be Dead. Go to the blog. I want you to subscribe, and you'll get a heads up on the blogs when they're published. My books. I have a book page there as well. So if you're interested in looking at, I've written 7 books around Be Different or Be Dead that people might be interested in. I have a quiz, a Be Different or Be Dead quiz on my website. That's a fun way of having you assess yourself or your organization or your team in terms of the Be Different or Be Dead principles. And you can find out things like, oh, gee, maybe I need to look at marketing, how to be different, or, this thing. So it helps you give a bit of a sense of priorities about where you want to look first. And then I guess as well, I got my own podcast. It's called Audacious Moves to a Billion. That's shown on the homepage. So if you want to get and it's just a different way of doing that. And what I do is I basically repost podcasts like this with the host's permission, obvious, as another way to get your message out, and another way to reinforce my own message on my own website. And so you can get at that. Ryan, you'd be proud of me. I actually figured out how to embed that player on my homepage. I did it myself for an old guy. Not bad, huh? And
Not bad.
and lastly, my email address is roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm really happy to have a one-on-one conversation with people. I mean, it's kind of fun. I get emails from people saying, hey, I heard you on the Decline Invite podcast, and here's my only statement. Roy, what do you think of this? And so it's an opportunity to have an engagement and develop a relationship, and hopefully help change the conversation, which is really what I'm trying to do about how businesses think and individuals think. And so there's a lot of opportunity to learn about my stuff and make a connection with me. And I really want to do more of that. And I'd be happy to come back for you because you've done an amazing job.
Wow, I appreciate that. And again, there is so much that I know that we haven't even touched on. There's so much more that could help individuals. And I'm right there beside you in the co-chair here of wanting the space to be different, but wanting it to change for the better and wanting to leave it in a place where, future leaders coming up now, there's a lot of people I mentor that are younger coming into this. And I've challenging times right now and what I would tell them. So I appreciate that you're doing this from the business perspective as well as anything else that you're hearing and working with companies. So for everybody out there that's listening, absolutely please go to any of Roy's resources there. If you find something you're connected with or you feel strongly about, absolutely pick it up, message, watch some, reach out. So I appreciate you taking the time with us today. And as always, this has been yes.
Thanks, Ryan.